Buenos dias from the heart of Buenos Aires, Argentina, the capital of Argentina. And I'm here to do a short stint on a war that Argentina was in that I bet none of you have ever even heard of. In fact, not that many people on planet Earth right now have ever heard of this war that Argentina had with Great Britain. What's that all about? And why is it important to Argentinian politics and nationalism today? And how is it also significant to more worldly themes? That's what I'm all about, you know me. So where am I at for starters? Right here in kind of a small central park in Buenos Aires, in the downtown district. This is actually behind me a war memorial to the Falkland Island War Memorial. But here in Argentina, they wouldn't even call it the Falkland Island. They'd call it Las Malvinas / the Falkland Islands. Argentina calls it Malvinas. The British call it the Falkland Islands. And if you can see over my shoulder there, that's a map of the islands themselves. It's two dinky little islands about 300 nautical miles off the shore of Patagonia. So pretty far down south. It's two dinky little islands. I think they have about 3,000 people on it, probably more like 5,000 sheep. I'm sure the sheep outnumber the humans. And it is a British overseas territory of the British. So how did these two countries get into a war over it? Well, obviously the Argentinians have claimed for some time, like 100 years, that the Falkland Islands are theirs. Again, it's just a couple little rocks. It's actually those two main islands with like 700 small rocks and little dinko islands around it. Oh, and somebody's cheering for us up here. That's just awesome. Yeah. Maybe they're heckling me, who knows? So the Argentinians have claimed these islands for perhaps 100 or 200 years. The British officially kind of took them over and cemented their claim on it in 1880s and have held it as an overseas territory ever since. So what the heck would have happened in 1982 to cause a war? That's the modern era. I know it's old for you all, but it's the modern era. It's the last kind of big war that the U.S. wasn't involved in, and it was a war. As you see in the war memorial behind me, those are the names of all the Argentinians that died in the war. Almost 700 Argentinians, I think about 300 British, and a handful of Malvasian / Falkland Islanders themselves. So what happened in 1982, and maybe this is already too much detail, but there was a period called the Dirty War in Argentina, where a military junta, a right-wing, crazy, fascist military junta controlled Argentina and did all sorts of dirty, nasty things. That's for another podcast, though. But they were in charge over the state that was getting increasingly restless with this military dictatorship rule. The economy was tanking. Things were going really badly. This dictatorship was trying to hold on to the country, and so they started beating the war drum. It's always a great way to rally national support, is to get into a war with somebody, and especially an ex-European colonial power that you can rally your people behind and say, the bad guys are over there. It's those damn Europeans who took the Malvinas from us. We need to get those back. And so in a totally unpredictable move, the Argentinian military, this dictatorship in 1982, I think it was about April, launched a full frontal assault on these small Falkland Islands. I don't know how many thousands of soldiers they sent over there, but I mean, again, there's only 3,000 people on the island. It's mostly sheep herders. So the world taken by surprise, certainly the British. There was no military garrison there. There was nothing. It was a British flag. That was it. So the Argentinian military takes it over immediately and declares this is Argentinian territory, like we've always been saying. The Argentinians at the time thought it was going to really rally the country, and it kind of did. But they thought for sure, this military junta thought for sure that the British, no way was going to do anything about it. British weren't going to come and invade this island way far in the South Atlantic. And the Argentinian military was completely wrong. The British said, no way, those are ours. And they sent, I don't even know, another full frontal assault, this time from the North Atlantic, as many ships as they could muster in a month, and as many men as they could get on those ships to come down here and physically retake the islands back. It was about by the time the British got here, it was a month or so later, and it started as a naval skirmish. There was some jets shooting out, jets shooting at each other in the air, ships shooting at each other on the sea. I think there was some downed planes on both sides. There was a submarine that was sank. There was a couple battleships that were sunk. And then there was a full-on people with guns fighting people with guns over that little dinky patch of land. And that's where you had about 1,000 casualties in this 75-day war, now known as the Falkland War. Now, again, the reasons why they did this are still kind of nebulous. The territorial claim has been there by the Argentinians. It remains there. Even though they lost that war, they were pushed off the island. The British reassumed control. It's a British overseas territory. The British have since set up voting to say, okay, well, you guys can vote to be independent if you want, but it's mostly British expats or British citizens. They are granted full British citizenship. So all the 3,000 people on the Falkland Islands say, no, we want to be British. So now you're in this intractable position that the Argentinians say that's our land, but it's full of British people who want to remain a British overseas territory. The Argentinians have said it's still ours. They're still making claims in international courts and putting forward statements saying, no, we want to petition and do anything in a legal way that we can to reassert control over this little island group. Make sense so far? What were the global repercussions for this? Well, the United Nations was kind of split. Everybody's like, what? A small group of islands? No one else wants to get into this fight. The United States, which classically supports Great Britain, and you would have thought for sure would have jumped in. The US and the UK, they're tight. But the United States at the time was supporting the military junta here in Argentina. They had this guy in, these military dictators they were supporting because they were scared that Latin America was going to turn communist. So the US was supporting the crappy government here and therefore couldn't really support its good friend the UK against its crappy ally here in the Argentinian military government. So the US was kind of stuck and said, hey, can't you guys not do that? It ended up that the Congress voted to support the British, but only material support. The US did not get involved in that war. So it was kind of divisive on the world stage. It was playing into Cold War politics at the time. It was still playing into kind of remnant anti-colonialism. So a lot of Latin American countries and anyone else who had been ever controlled by the British or another European power supported the Argentinian claim. And again, those dividing lines are still kind of there today. Okay, I said that was this one little war, a bizarre little war that caught the attention of the world for a couple months in 1982. How is it still active in today's world? Because it is. Because Argentina, still with this claim on these islands, has taken it to the OAS, an acronym you know, the Organization of American States, multiple times and said, we want the OAS to support our claim on this. And even though the US is a member of OAS, the OAS has voted to uphold and respect the Argentinian claim on these islands. Most of the Latin American countries say yes. What the hell are the British still doing around here? We threw all those guys out. It also has become more of a hot button issue in today's world because the British may have found petroleum off the coast of the Falkland Islands. And now Argentina's doubly pissed about this, saying, what? You're not going to be now pulling up a natural resource over there that we think is pretty much ours and has been ours. So now you got a resource monetary issue involved in this. And there's somebody cleaning the streets with a snowblower up there. And just recently, Argentina has taken it to the UN and said, hey, they're grabbing territory over here. They're trying to make a claim off their continental shelf of the Falkland Islands, which we claim are ours. So this is turning into a full-fledged island dispute. And that's how it now ties into what's going on across the greater globe that I've been talking about this whole semester at Sea Trip. The land on planet Earth has pretty much been settled. Everybody knows whose states are whose. There's still some border skirmishes. There's still some people who are still some states that aren't completely settled on their exact land border. But for the most part, there's 195, 196 states, and that's the way that it is. The ocean is still undecided. We are in an era where big powers, or even minor powers like Argentina, are going to fight over who controls these islands all over the place. Island disputes are going to be hot in the next 100 years, hell, starting now. The Falkland Islands is case in point, a totally active, still disputed, dank-ass little island chain off southern Patagonian shores that two major countries in the world are going to fight about, maybe again, because the Argentinian military has the Navy around there, and now there's British oil exploration and British Navy around there, and when ships start getting in close proximity to each other is when they bump into each other and wars start. But that's not the only one. How about the Diaoyu Islands / the Senkaku Islands over in the Pacific? The Senkaku, a small group of islands, much like the Malvinas, that Japan controls. And China says it's historically theirs. And there's all sorts of island disputes in the South China Sea that 7 different countries all claim islands in that sea and are probably going to fight about it because there's probably oil underneath of it. So this small little war in this small little place back in 1982 is symptomatic or symbolic of a wider issue going on globally about the fight over the seas and even little rocks and islands within those seas. It's also important to note that the current government of Argentina, President Cristina Kirchner, has been beating the war drum about the Falklands again, recently. They've already taken it to the OAS, they're making petitions to the United Nations, and there are signs all over Argentina that say the Malvinas are Argentina's, the Malvinas are ours, these islands are ours. Same sort of rhetoric you hear in Japan and China and other places of the world. Why would she be doing that right now? What the hell's going on in Argentina that those islands would suddenly be back in the national spotlight? Because the government's in trouble. Because her political not trouble, but economically Argentina's not doing well. Their economy is not so hot. There is some unrest. Her political party is losing power. It still dominates the Congress, and she's still holding on to the presidency, but it's been losing power. And so you're losing focus, you're losing the popularity, and your economy's in trouble, and maybe your domestic policies are under question. And so what can you do to defray attention from all that? Beat the war drum, much the same way the junta did back in 1982. Will Argentina go to war over it right this second? I doubt it, but nobody predicted it back in 82. Who could predict what will happen next? But oftentimes when governments are under stress or there's popular dissent within their country, a great way to deflect that away from yourself is bang the nationalist drum of, we've been wronged, this territory is ours, let's fight together, Argentina or whoever. And we might see that again with the Falkland Island situation, aka Las Malvinas Islands off the coast of Patagonia here in Argentina.